Hey, how are you?
Pretty good. Do you think God's imaginary though?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is that's okay.
Do you have a counter argument, or this is a
Oh
debate?
yeah. No, he's real, but I
Okay.
just
What's your argument?
I feel like you're rage baiting a lot here with the vegan and the trans women thing.
Yeah. So, do you have an argument?
To which one?
Anyone?
Uh, I mean, yeah, there's plenty evidence to support against all these things, but it's just kind of
Great. Let's hear it.
sad rage bait. You know what I mean?
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear your best argument
For why God's real.
for whatever you want.
Um, Besides that, just the absolute finite degree that if anything's off, this earth would not have life on it. That's probably the best place to start.
Okay. So, you're saying if the oxygen levels are off by 1%, there'd be no life?
I don't know the exact percentage, but yeah, if carbon's this way or that, or the
Okay.
earth
Well,
tilts
well,
too
that's just
much, we're all
blatantly
dying.
false. So let me explain to you why this is completely false, right? Life started on the Earth about 4 billion years ago with no oxygen at all. There was no oxygen, right? This is pre-oxygen, and there was
Can you
still
prove
life. There
that?
was still bacteria on the Earth.
Can you prove
And
that?
it's not that life today requires a perfect parameter by which we can survive. No, it's that we evolved with the Earth over time, and the Earth changed, and so did
But what
we.
evidence is there of that?
The fossil record, we have tons of evidence in our
There's
DNA.
fossil records that show that animals didn't breathe air.
Well, not animals, but bacteria and archaea. Uh, but yes, those beings didn't consume, they did not use oxygen. And we have stromatolite fossils which demonstrate this.
Yeah, I've not ever seen anything to support that.
The entire geological uh, basis of geology is the fact that these fossils and these sedimentary layers existed in which we find no evidence of oxygen in them. There is geological deposits that can't exist with oxygen.
Yeah, I've never
And then
seen
we find
anything.
a very distinct layer where oxygen is introduced, right? Like
Yeah,
in
I've never
iron
seen
belts,
anything
for
that
example, we
suggests that
see
that's
this
true.
oxidation of iron.
Yeah, I just never seen anything that suggests that's true. I mean, it's all a lot of good like theory, but
No, it's
that's
not. No, 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 sir. This isn't a theory. This is a fact.
that's
Right?
theory.
Do you know what a theory is in science?
Yeah, you don't have the
What
actual
is it? What's
evidence
a
to
theory
support
in
it.
science? What's a theory in science?
It's an educated guess.
No. So in science, a theory is
No, it's absolutely
a.
an educated guess.
Let me explain. In
Sure.
science, a theory is a mechanistic explanation for something that we observe. And theories in science contain evidence, they contain laws, they contain lots of data which predict and demonstrate the thing it's explaining. And
What do you
that's
think an
why
educated guess
even
means?
scientific theories are very good explanations in science. Now, in the case of what's relevant for this discussion, we know that oxygen didn't exist in the early Earth because of geological data, like the things I've just mentioned, stromatolite fossils, right? We can look at other things around us and find that life is not a perfect thing. Neither is the earth. We evolved with it over time. And so to believe that there's a God who perfectly tuned everything is absurd when you understand science.
I think the more science we discover, the more that it backs up the Bible. I mean,
Where where in science are dragons and wizards explained? I don't see any evidence of wizards or dragons in science, which is what the Bible
I
says.
don't. I see people discuss. Uh, I see people discuss witchcraft in the Bible.
Yeah, I have yet to see science demonstrate witchcraft. I have yet to see science demonstrate Adam and Eve, which could not have happened because we understand that evolution's a fact. And so the Bible
No, I
is
think
not proven by
it's
science at all.
no, I think the more we study it, the more we see it. Like with fasting, and there's evidence to support why we do certain things through our society.
Hold on.
Do
Fasting? Hold on. Let's talk about fasting. What do you mean by fasting? How is that evidence?
fasting's in the Bible all through the Bible, actually, over and over.
Okay, I understand that. People have fasted before the Bible. I'm asking you, though, what about fasting are we now discovering that the Bible talked about 2,000 years ago?
It's health benefits.
Well, I think that people have known that for thousands of years. I don't think science is just discovering it. And by the way, fasting can be dangerous too. There's benefits, but there's also negatives to fasting.
Not if you do it the way the Bible discusses. Seems to be perfect.
So the Bible talks about autophagy and all these things. No, it doesn't. What does the Bible say about fasting that we are now discovering through science that we could have never known before?
Is that when you do it right, when you do it for 24 hours, when you do it, you know, timely, that it heals the whole body, it cleanses it, which is what the
Yeah.
Bible says.
Okay. Well, that's not true. That's not a
Well,
scientific fact.
it does. I mean, we
You can't
have
fast for 24 hours and your whole body's clean. That
nobody
makes
said it
no
would.
sense.
Nobody said it would clean the entire body, but it cleans it of impure, bad cells. It goes after cells that are damaged.
We're talking a very minimal amount, if that's even possible.
And if you continue to do it the way the Bible just says through your whole life, then you're fine, because it will continuously cycle.
No, there's no evidence that fasting for 24 hours throughout your whole life is any better than not doing that. There's no evidence of that. And probably I
Well, you gotta
guarantee
start
the
reading
Bible
more, man.
doesn't talk about it that detail.
You gotta start reading more, man. That'll help you.
I'm sorry?
You gotta start reading about fasting more. That'll help you. There's a lot of people in the comments
Well, I
telling
don't
you the
think
same thing.
I don't think you have any actual scientific evidence that fasting helps like the Bible describes. I don't think there's any evidence like that.
Yes, I mean the biggest marker is it starts going after cells that are ruptured. It starts eating everything bad. It starts pulling it out.
Yeah,
That's the best thing.
that's what autophagy is called. But I'm asking you, where in the Bible does it say that your cells are going to be repaired?
It says it'll clean you. It'll help you.
Where? What verse is that?
It doesn't go into the same detail we use. It uses vague language.
Okay, then what verse does it say it's going to clean us in 24 hours?
It doesn't say in 24 hours.
Okay, then what does the Bible say?
Hang on a second. That it will renew your mind and body.
I don't want you to I want you to give me the verse so I can see what it actually says about fasting.
Hang on, let me look it up for you then. Because I've got it, but I don't know that off the top of my head. It's okay. You don't have to get more gray hair over it, man. Just hang on.
Yeah, I don't see any actual scientific talking in the Bible about autophagy or cells. I don't see any of this. The Bible, if anything, says that it's going to get you closer to God, but that's also not scientifically accurate. There is no God. There is no evidence that the Bible is true in any regard.
You think there's no God? Like, for real? That's like you're not.
Yeah, because you're not giving any evidence, right?
Well, the evidence all around you for God. That's unavoidable.
Where is the evidence? I mean, you haven't given me a single piece yet.
I think I think the boring thing about you is that when people bring it to you, like, hey man, like if the Earth was off this much, we would all die. Well, yeah, but that doesn't show God. Oh, okay.
That's not what I said. I explained to you that you maybe see. It's not that I have bad arguments; it's that you just don't understand them. I explained to you the fact that if the Earth was different, there would still be life. The Earth could be vastly different, and there would still be life here.
No.
And you're just saying no, right? So you're just going to say no, but you're denying all the scientific evidence that counters that, right? You're denying the fact that we evolve through time, and that alone is just going to set you up for failure.
I'm with Clarence. Can DNA create itself? No, it cannot. But
DNA doesn't create itself. DNA is just a molecule that utilizes other molecules in its environment
his
to
point
carry
is,
out
can it
some
structure
reactions.
itself?
I'm sorry?
His point is, can it structure itself? Which it can.
I don't know what structuring
Point
itself means. There's no such
that
thing as
points to the divine.
structuring. Hold on, Corey. There's no such thing as structuring itself. DNA
Right,
is the
because God
result.
did it.
Hold on. DNA is the result. It's a chemical molecule, and it is the result of various different chemical products in specific environments. And so it is not as simple as saying, oh, it just creates itself and therefore God. No, we understand how DNA occurs and we understand how it emerged to a good enough degree in which we don't need God. So no, your arguments are failing.
Man, I've heard some really, really like bad rage bait, but like it's just kind of boring at this point. Like you literally just made the argument for me that it don't do that, but then you're just still sticking to your guns. I don't get it.
Well, I'm not sticking to my guns. It's that I'm sticking to the evidence, and you just don't understand what I'm telling you.
I'm just telling you, man. I just don't get like why the. Well, I guess so. I guess you're probably monetizing this, so that's probably why. But I mean, I guess it's good for business, as they say.
Okay, so that's all you have?
Yeah, if you're just every time somebody presents evidence.
People got to realize that so maybe their arguments are just bad. Maybe they're not right all the time. Maybe their arguments are just.
Yeah. I feel like we're gonna be somewhat led by something.
Hello?
Yeah. Oh my god, I love the new lamp so much.
I love lamp.
Hello?
They're all fun.
Wait,
Hello,
Hey, how are you?
I'm all good. God's real.
Okay, what's your evidence?
In the Bible, Joshua's long day, he stopped the day for a full day, Jesus Christ did. And they cannot, and it's been proven that there's a day missing from the year.
There's a day missing from where?
The year.
The calendar year?
Yeah. It's been I don't know how it works, but NASA proved it that there's a day missing.
So calendars are just made up by people, right? They're just arbitrary numbers and days on a piece of paper. They're not. It's not real, right? The calendar.
If you Google it, it will tell you that they know there's a day missing.
Because people could have subtracted it from the calendar. Like that's possible. It's possible to just cut off a day from the calendar, right? And that happens actually frequently throughout history. People have done that. They've taken days out, put stuff in to kind of make it more coherent.
I don't know. You just look around, and like the last ghost said, the Earth is perfectly made to be lived on. There's no way a cell just created itself.
Tell that to the dinosaurs, though. I mean, tell that to the dinosaurs who got destroyed by an asteroid impact and by volcanoes and climate change.
Oh, where did the dinosaurs come from
then? Good question. Dinosaurs are a type of reptilian animal that evolved about 250 million years ago.
But where did they come from? You know what I mean?
Came from previous amphibious animals about 300 million years ago. That you can go to.
But you say all these hundreds of millions of years ago. There's no way we can
hold on, sir. Hold on.
See, I'm listening. Sorry, I'll listen.
Good. Yeah, it's good to listen now and then, right? You can go all the way back to worm-like animals about 600 or 700 million years ago, and all the way back to bacteria and archaea about 3 billion years ago. And so all life you see around you has evolved over time. It's remarkable, but it's fact. We are the product of 4 billion years of evolution.
But where's the proof for 4 billion years?
In the fossil record, in the geological strata.
There's no proof that the planet is 4 billion years old.
Well, there's something called zircon crystals, in which we can take a look at their constitutes, things like zircon, things like uranium and lead, and we find that the different ratios of these elements tell us how old the rock is. And we find that that rock was dated to, and consistently, these rocks are dated to about 4.5 billion years old.
Mate, there was a man making furniture, staining it with a tea bag, and then he was getting it dated, and they was telling him it was 150 years old, and it's actual proof, and you can Google it yourself. So you can't go off numbers like that.
Well, that's a curious case, because that specific example contains different chemical ingredients that are unpredictable, and hence would be less accurate versus doing on a zircon crystal rocks, in which they were not tainted at all. And so the substances, the materials inside of the thing you're testing are very important to understand. And if you don't understand them, you're going to get a very inaccurate answer. But yes, there are these kinds of errors that occur along the lines, but for the most part, radiometric dating is very accurate.
Well, obviously it's not, because how could you see that with a tea bag stain on it and go, all right, that's 150 years old? You're telling me all these scientists and these
bags contain various chemicals that can hinder the accuracy of the thing you're testing.
So you're telling me a tea bag can make something look 150 years old? Come on, man.
Look, you're not understanding the fundamental science here. When we do carbon dating, we're looking at carbon atoms. We're looking at specific atoms. And other substances in that tea bag can influence those carbon atoms. It can cause them to react in certain ways that can throw off the reading. And that's why tea bags are not a good thing to date. Sometimes you just can't date accurately.
So what do they use to date stuff then?
We use argon dating. We use potassium argon dating. We use uranium lead dating. We use these various different radiometric dating methods. And each of them have their own various accuracy.
Are they made by a man or woman?
No, nobody's making rocks. The methods are made.
Is it made by a man or a woman?
What is?
What they test it with.
They're just looking at the materials in the rocks. They're not testing.
Yeah, what are they looking at with?
Their eyes.
Oh, right. So I can look outside now and go, the planet's 100 years old. It doesn't make any difference.
I'm sorry?
I can look outside now and go, that piece of grass outside's 100 years old.
No, sir. It's not just looking at it and going, oh, that's old. No, there's
you just said they use their eyes to look at it, to date things.
Yes, they use their eyes, but they also use math.
All right, so who made math?
Human beings.
Exactly. So it can be wrong.
But it's still descriptive of reality, right? If I take 1 + 1 is 2, that still reflects onto reality. I have one bottle and another bottle. That's 2 bottles, right? So what we describe through math accurately reflects reality, just like in logic and math. It's just a description of reality.
But you know they look through a microscope, right? Or whatever they use.
Yes, you look at these things through various methods.
So how can you look at
your argument of these things that God is real now?
But how can you look at something and go, yeah, that's 4 billion years old, or however old the planet is?
Because again, by doing mathematics and by looking at the substances in these rocks, we can determine how old they are, and this is fascinating.
It's not fascinating though. You could do that with anything. I could look at a piece of clothing and go.
I don't think you quite understand. Look, I think what we need to do is go learn what radiometric dating is. It's fascinating if you understand it and how it's done. taking a look at daughter isotopes and parent isotopes and looking at the differences and the ratios of these elements in these samples. Go learn, sir. There's so much out there to learn about.
You can't really argue with me, though, can you? You know yourself what I'm saying has got a point to it. If you be honest, you know I've got a point.
I don't know what your point is, so you're just saying, no, you're wrong, I'm right.
I'm not saying you're wrong, right? I'm not saying you're wrong, but what I'm saying is, from my point of view, you're saying they use maths, which was made by a human. You use microscopes, which is made by a human. Does it mean it's right?
Well, it's very accurate because we continually do these experiments over and over again, and we continue to get reliable results.
And how many things has people got wrong? Like when cigarettes first come out, cigarettes was meant to be very healthy for you.
I don't think anybody said that, but if they did, they weren't doing it scientifically.
Come on, man.
Hold on, sir. Hold on. No science demonstrated that cigarettes were healthy. At least science that wasn't being, impacted by other people, by lobbyists. But I will say that as science improved over time and our data got better and better, yes, we figured out that we were wrong in the past at various times in the past. But that's the entire point of science. It improves, it gets better. And we don't have all the right answers all the time, but we have a good amount of them right now. And they don't show God exists. They do show that zircon crystals exist and that they are 4.5 billion years old.
Yeah, but there is things to prove that God exists.
Okay, what is it?
Well, they found where Noah's Ark was. They found that mountain top where he landed. If you Google that, they found that. They found the pool where he healed the blind man. They found multiple stuff proving from the Bible.
Okay, so let's go one by one. They found a mountain.
Yeah.
Where God landed.
Boat was, and it was the perfect sizes for the boat that he made the ark. Okay. It indented. And then by the pool where he healed the blind man, they said that was gone for years. And then they ended up finding it. The same spot.
Let's go one by one. They found the big boat. Okay, now what was on this big boat, sir?
They didn't find the actual boat. They found
they found where it landed.
Yeah.
Okay, how did they know it was the boat that landed on there?
Because it was the perfect sizes that was written in the Bible of the boat.
What was the perfect size?
Well, I can't tell you from the top of my head, man. Just like you keep saying 4 billion years ago, I can say the same thing.
Okay. I understand that what I'm telling you seems obscure. 4 billion years, that's crazy. But when you actually understand the science and the methodology behind what we're doing, it makes all the sense in the world. On the other hand, what you're describing to me, a big boat on a mountain where it was a perfect size, there is no science or methodology behind that. And so even though it sounds childish, it is ridiculous. Even though a toddler could understand that, it is nonsense because there is nothing supporting it. Now, what I'm describing to you is complicated and hence requires more complicated.
But the same scientists that, I don't know, well, the same people, then I don't know what category you put them in, is proving that the Ark was there. So why are they wrong about the Ark being there, but then not the planet being 4 billion years old?
Just because somebody claims something without
hold on, watch what you say now, because it can backfire on you, because I can say the same thing about the planet being 4 billion years old.
No, we don't just have people saying these things, sir. We have actual data demonstrating.
We have data of the Ark being where it was.
Where is the data demonstrating the Ark was where it was?
Google it. You got it. You put it up. Google it.
Google it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but if you're going to come into these debates, you need more data.
I can Google what you said.
I can
Google. I have Googled it.
Let's just answer. I have Googled it, and most of these claims are coming from Ron Wyatt, who was a fraud, a scam artist, and is not an authority on any scientific matter. And there is no data on this, just people's claims.
There's not people's claims. It's there.
It's what?
It's there. It wasn't claims. He found it. He discovered it. same thing as American
but
meters.
where are the findings? Where is the scientific literature on this?
I don't know where it is. You can just Google it, man. It comes up on Google.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but Google isn't going to cut it. I want something better than that. And secondly, I urge you to go learn some more science. I urge you to learn about the Earth, the geology, and the zircon crystals, and it's amazing stuff.
I'm not saying like you're wrong about these crystals and things like that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not disagreeing with you. Right?
Okay, but so that's why I urge you to go learn about them,
But
because
what
it will change the way you see
saying to
the
you
world.
is that you're saying the 4 billion years old, but then you're telling me it's man maths they use and it's a man-made telescope they use. So what my point is that, well, why is your side right and then my side's wrong?
Because our side doesn't just say things; we can show it. We
But I've
can
just given
demonstrate it. We
you
can
two.
perform the experiments. We can poke it and probe it in any way you want to, and all your criticisms are rendered invalid because we can show that you're wrong with the methodology and not just with empty words.
But what's the methodology then?
The methodology via radiometric dating, via taking a look at the substances and the constitutes of rocks and analyzing their half-life ratios and half-lives, and doing mathematics to determine how old they are.
Well, if we go back, you told me they look at it with their eyes and then they get the data.
They look at it through microscopes, through sampling. There's all various different ways they collect this data.
So when they look at it through a microscope, does it have a number that just comes up on the rock saying, I'm this old?
It's a measurement of the volume of rock, or the mass of the rock inside of the parent substance.
All right, so how does that work then?
You measure how many different, how much mass of this material is, of this isotope and another isotope, and the parent rock, and you decipher how old it is based on how much is decayed, its half-life, how much is it decayed over time, right? That tells us a story of the past.
Yeah, but how do you know? If it's decayed, then how do you know how long it takes for it to decay?
Because we know mathematically the half-lives of various isotopes, because they are naturally unstable, and hence they will decay at a specific rate.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, where do you get the number from then, from it decaying? If it's not there...
Data from mathematics.
When you look at it and it's not there, how can you say...
Describing the real world, we look at... Because, for example, certain elements were discovered purely by this method too. Because we know what elements are. We know that atoms are just constituted of electrons and protons and neutrons. And if we understand the mathematics behind an atom, well, we can extrapolate this to higher atoms. And the same is done to heavier elements like uranium. And
yeah, but where's the proof?
It's naturally unstable, and hence it has a specific half-life. It decays into different smaller daughter isotopes, which we can measure, and we can detect the differences over time.
Yeah, but if something's decayed when you look at it, how can you tell how it's decayed and how long it's took for it to decay?
It's the case that we know that mathematically it decays because we know we know the nature of atoms. We know that atoms operate in certain ways.
Yeah, but how do you know that?
Because we can measure this. We can measure, for example.
How are you measuring an atom?
We can measure in real time how atoms decay. And so we translate this to heavier isotopes. I'm sorry?
Yeah, but how? How can you measure something which you cannot see?
We can see it. We can take a substance with fairly low half-life, and we can see it decay into smaller daughter isotopes.
So how do you know how long it takes for it to decay then?
We calculate the time. We just watch it decay over time.
So how do you calculate that though?
With a stopwatch. Like, this is basic stuff, right? You don't need
with a stopwatch. What if the watch is broken?
You don't need high mathematics understandings to realize how this is done. But more importantly, you're asking all these great questions. But it's I'm curious though, why don't you ask these same questions about the things you already believe? Why are you so skeptical of the science? But whenever it comes to your beliefs, you're not skeptical a bit.
That's a good question. I am skeptical. Everyone who gets into religion is skeptical.
Okay. Then look into the science more. Then
But
look into your claims more and compare the two. Compare the two views.
in my view, which obviously you're not going to agree with,
I'm sorry, but we're going to move on because although I love that discussion, people want to see more. Move on. Let's move on. You know, I love Christians because they often ask great questions. They're very inquisitive. The problem is it's all misplaced, right? Because they're not willing to dive deep into the science and learn that they're incorrect. They're scared to do that. But when it comes to their own beliefs, they refrain from all that inquisitiveness.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Good.
Well, I've seen hundreds of your lives, so they're pretty interesting. I've noticed that a lot of people that have a belief, they most of them don't even know what they're talking about, and they make up stuff. And then there are also a lot of people that try to make up their own type of thinking and say, "Oh yeah, this is the explanation for this," and it seems like it's very common.
Okay. What's your argument for these guys?
Well, I'm never gonna be vegan for that. I love my burgers.
Me too. I love burgers too, but that doesn't give me the right to slaughter anybody.
Yeah, that's right. That's true though. But I think there is a God because it's hard to explain on my side, but I've like experienced the Holy Spirit in my life, and I don't know if you think that's just this ooh, it's a magical thing. It's like, oh, it's not real, but other people have experienced it too. And like for example, it's warn people of what could happen in the future. It's trying to help you, and I mean it can't be something backed on science. I mean it's unexplainable.
Okay. Let's. So you're saying your best evidence for God is your experience.
Yeah.
Now, what exactly did you experience?
Um, it's hard to explain. It's the Holy Spirit. You just look it up and you can see what a general explanation is. It's it's not God, it's not Jesus, but I mean, it's hard to explain it. I mean, I'm not,
Like, I understand it might be hard to explain, but can you give an example of like what happened or
I mean,
what did you like?
I
What is
know,
the result of God or whatever
because
coming into you?
I know it's not a hallucination because I've already experienced that before, so I know the difference between that and a hallucination. So I mean, it was real. It was, it. I mean, it's just like a guide, pretty much. It's trying to help you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's trying to
Okay.
help you do
Great. So it's a
better.
guide trying to help you. What did it
Yeah.
help you with?
I mean, something was going to like kill me, and I was warned about it beforehand.
Okay. Well, thankfully you're still here. So you're saying that you had get you but you're somebody gave you information that you're going to die.
It's not
You
a
have to die.
someone. It's not a someone. It's like a. I mean,
Yourself.
It's not myself either. I mean,
In your voice?
it's
Is it
hard
in your
it's
voice?
hard to explain. I mean, it probably isn't even God, but it's something that's science can't explain.
Okay, so but can you give an example of what was trying to harm you and how you got saved?
I mean, it was, just a normal person, but I was warned beforehand before it was going to even happen, and
Warned
I was ready for it.
how were you warned?
Um, I was warned earlier in the day, like every other person. You live out a normal day, and you know the difference between a normal day and like
Okay,
stuff.
but what? Okay, was it like the sense that you just got something in your mind, something told you,
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
go
yeah.
here?
You knew it wasn't a normal day, and you're like, okay, you just went on
Okay,
and
now can I ask you what exactly was the death sentence? What
uh
was going to harm you?
well, someone almost like tried to purposely like crash into me while I was driving, and I was also warned right before it happened too.
Oh, okay. So you're about to get into a car accident, and you have somebody guided you to turn or something or get out of the way.
No, I mean, just it sounds stupid and sounds crazy, I know, but I mean, you can you can try to see other people's experience with the Holy Spirit. It's different, but
No, I understand. It was an experience. I'm not saying that you never experienced this. I'm just asking more about what this was, right? Because I believe what you're telling me is you had a it was probably either a panic attack in which you felt like it wasn't a real moment. You probably felt adrenaline, and you probably had this in retrospect. You had this kind of inner voice that was telling you, "Oh, thank God you swerved this way, or thank God you turned this way, or you would have died." Right? And now you believe that's the Holy Spirit talking to you. This would be my explanation for that event. And I know it's appealing to say that must be some magic ether out there guiding you, but I really think it's just a regular experience that we all have now and then, making us feel like something more is happening, but it's not.
yeah, but there's other things. I don't like to go like saying like the Bible proves, that's like a bad way to say that God is real. A lot of people say that, and it's the most common things like, oh, just read the Bible, and then they don't even read the Bible anyways too. But and there's you know, I guess we're like really lucky to be alive on this planet,
I
like
agree.
all the
We are lucky.
circumstances, and it's. I mean, you can't prove it either way. God is imaginary or God is real. But
Okay. Well, thank you, man.
yep.
All right, let's move on to the next guy or gal.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How you doing?
Good.
So, I have a quick question for you. Do you
Sure.
think that science requires faith?
No, science is the opposite of faith. It's based on real data and evidence. Faith is not.
So there's nothing within science that can't be definitively proven, is what you're saying.
I don't know what. No, things in science can be demonstrated to be true. We can have a very high credence level in regards to certain claims in science, but no faith is involved.
Means that there's nothing in science that can't be proven. You're basically saying
We can't hear. You're cutting out. We can't hear you.
no room for error in science.
We can't hear you. You're cutting out.
Here, let me move to a different area and see if that'll help. Can you hear me?
Yeah, a little bit. You're still cutting out. Let's move on. Sorry. Sorry. Hello. Come on up, folks. Keep tapping. Let's get people in here to debate. Something's happening with my Wi-Fi or TikTok. I think it's bugging out. Give me 1 second.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you mean by trans woman or woman? I don't know if I'm understanding the same. That's why.
Do you know what a transgender person is?
Yeah. But are you saying like if a female goes transgender and obviously is trying to be like a male, are you saying it's still a woman? Or what do you?
No. What I'm saying is a trans woman is somebody who simply identifies as a woman, and hence they are a woman, because gender identity is just that, an identity.
So you're saying a male can be a woman?
Yes. Because there's a distinction between sex and gender.
But they weren't born a female.
It doesn't matter what they're born in terms of their sex. If somebody identifies as a woman, they are a woman.
That's crazy. Okay, well that's all I had.
How is it crazy? Demonstrate why that's bad.
That's really the only logic I have. I mean, it's not born with those parts. It's basically like saying a woman can be a man, and they're not born
That's
with.
not. You're confused. You're confused. Do you know what it means to be transgender?
Yeah, but
What does it mean? What does it mean then?
It's basically them turning to the other gender, wearing a man wearing dresses and stuff, makeup and stuff like that.
No. You don't know what it means to be transgender, right? It doesn't mean you change gender. You're not changing anything, right? Trans doesn't mean you're changing. Transgender just means you don't identify with what people tell you you are. That's all it means. And so people that are transgender, trans women, they're born women. Now, this goes deeper into psychology and neurobiology, but your gender identity is something that the brain is. See, I identify as a man, not because of my genitals, but because of my brain. The brain has to do with how we identify. And so that's why somebody who's transgender woman is a woman. And that's why someone who's a trans man is a man, because it all has to do with their identity.
All right, bro. Appreciate it.
That's all?
Yep.
Okay. That's not my only definition of woman. I'm not saying that's a definition of woman. I'm saying they are a woman because that's what a woman is.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Um,
A woman is a gender identity that aligns with female sex typical archetype. Right? That's what a woman is. If you want my definition of woman, it's not circular. There's no such thing as circular definitions, by the way, because everything, if you understand mathematics, you understand that at some point, we're always going to have to use the same word to define another word, because there's only a limited amount of words in the English dictionary. And so there's always going to be a point in which you go far down enough the line of words that you'll find you have to define it with another word. And so, but that's besides the point. I mean, the point is that a woman is a gender identity, and a trans woman is someone who identifies with that identity. Therefore, they are trans women. And it's that simple. I'm not saying every definition is necessarily circular, but there's nothing fallacious about words being circular in the sense of defining them, right? There's nothing fallacious about that because there's no resolution. It's the nature of language. Okay.
Yo,
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good. You?
Good.
I want to speak about the aspect of you saying God is imaginary. Could you start tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I don't believe in a God. I think it's not real. There's no reason for it to be real. There's no evidence of it.
All right. I don't want to say I believe in God or I do not believe in God. Well, what I want to say is, if you have you seen how like we have fighter jets nowadays?
Okay, I can barely hear you through your microphone. Can you clear it up?
Nowadays we have fighter jets, right?
Okay, yeah.
You know what a fighter jet is? Like first gen, second gen, sixth gen, and then when you think about Mark One, Mark Two jets, right? So now, when you think of human beings, and then compare it to, let's say, a monkey, you like the monkeys have fur, right? They're less knowledgeable. They have like a lower IQ than us. But then now, if you take like 1 billion years of evolution, and then you kind of put that together, don't you think that the way that monkeys are is kind of how like our brain developed, opposite, like opposite timelines?
I don't think what you said was coherent. Um,
If
but
I
I suspect you're suggesting that the way we evolved is I actually don't know how to describe it. I don't know. Try again.
I think God is real in the aspect of almost as in global warming, because like if you think about AI, you know,
How's it going, man? We were cut off earlier.
Hey, yeah.
So, I watched a couple of the people come up, and the one was talking about the trans women thing. And you said that's just how they identify, and that's what makes them a woman, right?
No. Yes is the case that what makes them a woman is that they identify as a woman, but what a woman is distinct from just that identity. A woman is a gender identity that encompasses many different female typical traits.
Okay, what are the traits?
Behavioral traits, psychological traits, social traits, social norms and roles, right? All these are certain traits that we would align with female people, right? Female persons, typically.
Okay, so if you had a man that was very feminine in all aspects, had pretty much all the traits of a woman, and he didn't identify as a woman, but he had those traits, would that make him a woman?
Again, we don't look at one particular trait. There is no one trait that distinguishes men from women. That's not how words or categories work in language. There is no one trait that distinguishes trucks from cars. It doesn't exist. Oh, well, trucks have beds, cars don't have beds. Well, there's some trucks there are some cars that have beds. What are those things? The same with men and women, right? So you could say, oh, well, femininity. How about men? Men can be feminine. Does that mean that they're women? No, because it's not just one trait. It's the typical traits that we associate with those genders. Now, and there isn't a necessary or sufficient amount of these traits either. Just like when it comes to a car, there is no necessary sufficient number of traits that a thing has to be a car. It's just how society deems it to be. And however, identity has a big part in this. Identity has a big part, plays a major role in how people associate between different genders.
So you're saying that there is no way to definitively identify anything then?
When did I ever say that? Obviously,
You
we
said it
make this,
doesn't matter the amount of traits that something has to
we make
identify
this,
it.
we make distinctions through something called prototype theory in the philosophy of language. If you understand certain theories of categorization, you realize that there's one called prototype theory. There are non-essentialist theories of categorization in which we don't have particular traits that qualify, or we don't have necessary conditions to categorize things. It's just like I was saying, standout traits or typical traits that we arbitrarily deem as belonging to certain categories. In the case of a car and a truck, I just explained this to you. It's like you didn't understand it.
Okay, so how do you identify a cat?
Typical traits it has.
What are the traits to identify a cat?
Mammal, certain fur, certain body shape, certain anatomy, certain behaviors, all of the above. But there is no there is no set of conditions that would render something a cat or not. It's just arbitrary when you come down to the nitty-gritty of words.
What do you mean it's arbitrary? Then you're saying nothing has identity.
Okay, so do you agree that there's a difference between trucks and cars?
Yes, there's a difference.
What's the difference that distinguishes trucks from cars?
Trucks have beds, and
But
they're
some
made
but,
to.
but, but some cars can have some cars have that. The El Camino has a bed.
Has a truck bed?
Yeah, Subaru Baja has a truck
It's not
bed.
a truck. It's not a truck bed.
Well, but it has a bed.
It doesn't matter if it has a
It,
bed.
it has
It's
a
not a
bed.
truck.
It has a bed just like a truck has.
My house has a bed too. Does that make it a car or a truck?
Well,
No.
that's a good point. But the house has different characteristics that are typical of houses, more typical of houses, and not typical of trucks or cars. See, the point you're missing is that there is no such trait that perfectly distinguishes any two categories of things. This is the nature of language, and that's why I don't subscribe to the essentialist view. And this is why many trans critical people do, because they know that their opponents don't understand philosophy of language and are not going to even raise this point. So
you're
I'm sorry, you thought you had a point here, but you don't.
so someone who believes in science doesn't believe that certain organisms are identifiable by visible traits that
Not at all.
identify that
Not at all.
specific.
I just explained this
How
to
do you
you.
identify a cat?
Typical traits, standout traits.
Okay, so how do you identify a man?
Typical traits.
What is a typical trait of a man?
Typical traits that would align with the male archetype.
Okay, how do you identify a boy cat?
A what?
A boy cat.
A boy?
Yeah, a male, a boy cat.
A boy cat?
Yes.
There is no such thing as gendered cats. You talk about male cats. Male cats are distinguished by certain typical traits they have. Their sexual traits. Then there's the traits of their species, traits of their breed.
So cats are genderless.
Animals don't have the ability to understand gender. They don't have gendered categories. They don't, because gender as we talk about it is a socially derived thing. It's not something that cats can understand.
Okay, so what was gender? What did gender mean before it was changed?
I'm sorry?
What was the meaning of gender before it was changed?
What was the meaning of gender before it was changed? When was it changed?
Look it up. It was changed. I don't know the exact date.
Okay. We are discovering more about gender. Why? Because we're discovering more about psychology. We're finding certain brain structures being very relevant to gender identities, like the hypothalamus, the thalamus, the prefrontal cortex, various different structures. Now, we're also discovering that there are more socially complicated complications to gender. Different cultures have different versions of what a man is or what a woman is. And so that's what we're discovering. We're not somehow changing things in a way that makes it impossible to conceive of gender before we discovered it, more of it, about it. Because gender has always existed. It's just that we are now learning more about it. And you just seem to not want to learn about it.
No, I know about gender. I know what
Okay,
identifies
so
a male as a male, and I know
okay,
what
dude. So
identifies
then,
a female.
what is the distinction between sex and gender then? If you know all about gender,
There wasn't a distinction until they changed it.
well, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but you said you understand gender. What's the distinction between sex and gender under current gender theory?
I'm not going by current gender theory. That's what I just told you.
Well, what is it then? If you understand it, what is it? Just tell me.
It's what it used to be. Male
I
is a
don't. Look,
male.
I don't think you know what
Girl,
you're talking.
boy.
I frankly don't know. I don't think you know what you're talking about. Frankly, see, oftentimes when people come up here and are so hyper contrarian, they are, in fact, just ignorant about the topic, which is fine. How about let's try this? Let's try this. Do you know what a transgender person means?
Transgender person, yeah, it's someone that identifies as a certain gender.
Well, that applies to men. I'm sorry, but that applies to cisgender people. What's a transgender person?
What are you talking about? What's a trans? I just told you what I thought a transgender.
You told me what applies to cisgender people.
All right, you tell me what a transgender is then.
Okay. You don't know what it means, all right? A transgender person is someone who identifies as a different gender from what they were given at birth. And so, if you don't even understand what a transgender person
What I
is,
just
you
said,
don't
they
even. No, you
identify
didn't.
as a
You said
different
someone who
gender.
doesn't identify, who identifies with a different gender or something.
That's what you just said.
No, different gender than they were given at birth. Not a different gender. I don't think you even said different. I think you just said somebody who identifies with a gender.
If I'm identifying as a different gender, that would obviously insinuate that it's different from what I was born as.
Oh, well, that applies to not just trans people. That applies to various other genders too, not just trans. And it wouldn't necessarily apply to trans.
Okay, so trans people are people that identify as a gender that is not who they were born as, or
That no, a
present
gender that
as,
was
or
that they
however
were
you guys
given
want to
at
say it.
birth, right? The gender they were given, like so for example, I was born, they call me a boy, but what if I grew up and I don't identify as a boy, identify as a girl or a woman? That would render me trans woman,
So
and
why did they call you a boy at birth?
because that's just how people socially did it. They just labeled me a name because that's what typically happens, and that's okay. The problem is when people
That's how they do it
continually
at the hospital.
misgender. I'm sorry.
I'm pretty sure when I was born, they anything that came out with a penis was a boy.
That's typically how people have done it for centuries. But now we're learning more about gender and that there's a distinction between sex and gender. That it's not just about your pee-pee, that it has to do a lot with your brain, your neurobiology, your psychology, the way you think, the way you identify. And that can't be seen from looking at your genitals. That is something that is deeper. And so that's why we're, this whole thing about
Yeah, it's deeper
Uh,
than genitals.
oh,
It's also chromosomal.
a man, a woman is an adult human female. That entire belief is completely denying and rejecting a whole reality that exists in people who you don't understand.
It's not just surface level. It is chromosomal as well.
Chromosomes and whatever, all the above.
I'm
Chromosomes,
not talking
DNA
about
production.
hermaphrodites, people that are born with. I'm not.
I
Those
don't
aren't
care
any.
about that, sir. I'm talking about gender, which has nothing to do with your chromosomes.
It has nothing to do with your chromosomes.
No.
So, based on what you're saying, anybody can really identify as anything.
Well, it's not that simple. It's not like I can come out tomorrow and say, I'm going to identify as a woman just for the hell of it. No, it
No,
identification is a
I could
very
identify as anything that I wanted though. I could identify as
no,
a
I don't think so.
as a dog.
I don't think I could identify as a woman.
No,
See,
I could identify as a dog though.
I don't think you could do that either because
Why?
you don't know what's it mean what's it mean to be a dog or think like a dog. You can't think like a dog. You don't
I
have a
know as
dog
much
brain. You don't have
I
a
know as
dog.
much
You don't
about
have a
thinking
dog
like a
identity.
dog.
You don't have a dog brain.
I know as much of thinking like a dog as a
No, you
woman
don't, sir.
knows
You
thinking
don't
like a
know
man.
you don't know what it means to think like a dog because you're not a dog. But when it comes to a woman, all the woman means is a particular identity that can come from the brain, the human brain. And
Yeah,
so
but how does a
humans,
woman know what thinking like a man is if she's not really a man?
again, thinking like a man is something that my brain does. And now we're finding that
That man's
trans
brain does,
men,
yeah.
hold on, we're finding that trans men have very similar brains to me. See, there are cisgender men and there are trans men, and we're finding that certain structures of their brains are very correlated to one another. They're distinct, and we're finding that there are several different brain phenotypes that humans have that correlate with their gender identities, respectively. And so this is fascinating. We're finding about more about the brain that you don't want to entertain or understand.
Well, no, I kind of agree with what you just said, actually. So,
Then you would agree that trans
that,
men and trans women are their respective genders.
yeah, just like,
Okay.
humans and apes have very similar characteristics in brains and all that. I guess I could identify as an ape, then, correct?
Well, yeah, every person identifies as an ape because that's just how we think. We are apes.
Nobody identifies as an ape, dude. What are you talking about?
You don't identify as a human ape?
Nope,
What are you?
I'm a human.
Okay, well then you identify as an ape because humans
Just
are
because
apes.
you're saying I identify as an ape doesn't make it true.
Look, an ape is just a label for a particular genus of animals, but we fit within that genus, and hence we can identify as apes because we are apes and we think like apes do. Now, we don't think like other apes necessarily. We don't think like chimps. I can't identify as a chimp because I don't have a chimp brain, but I can identify as a human. and I can identify as a man because a man is also correspondent to a particular brain phenotype. And that's all it means to have a gender identity.
None of what you said really makes any sense.
Well, I agree at first it might be a bit obscure, but that's why you have to do your due diligence and learn about these things. Learning is important. And the fact that you don't know anything you've talked about so far at all. You didn't know about the philosophy of language. You didn't know about prototype theory. You didn't know what a transgender person is. You didn't know what gender means. You didn't know a damn thing, and yet you're here trying to criticize me, which is fine.
You were
But if
saying
you
I didn't
really
know
want to be
anything
challenged,
based on
if you
your
really want to
view.
win these debates, you have to do more research.
You were saying I don't know anything based on your view.
Based on my view, no,
Based on
sir.
your view, based on what you believe, based on what you have put your faith in.
I don't have faith, sir. The evidence is overwhelming for everything I've just talked about. If you want studies, I can cite them.
I don't care what other people have come up with. So why
It's
was
not coming up,
science
sir. It's something that we can demonstrate, not just
why
something
was
that we can.
science not good enough back then when they had a certain definition for a certain thing to this point
Science
where now
has
they've changed it?
evolved. Science, our results that we make from science have changed because our methodology has changed. Our experiments have gotten better. We've learned more through science. Now, in the past, people didn't know what gender was the way we understand it today. They still used the man and woman to refer to genitals or
Okay,
refer to other characteristics that we would no longer consider
let's shift gears
gender.
here since you're all about science. What is science?
It's a methodology, a way of thinking that follows a particular method that is evidence based, empirics based, and
What is the
seeks to
main
predict
one of the
things.
main components of science?
The main components in the scientific method:
Would you agree that observation
hypotheses,
would you be
theorizing, measurements,
would
experimentation.
you agree that observation is an important mechanism of science?
Yes.
Okay then. So how going back to the gender thing, if you had a person that couldn't talk, couldn't speak, couldn't tell
Mm.
you what they identify as, and you could only rely on your observation of looking at this person, how would you identify them and their gender?
We would identify them as whatever. We would identify them as any way we can because we don't know what they are. And
You
so
would observe their
the kind
characteristics
thing
and
to
you would
do,
identify them based on the
we
characteristics.
couldn't identify them properly.
That's
We
not
just
true.
couldn't.
That's where
We
we
just wouldn't
disagree
know.
because that's not true.
Okay, then show me what they would identify as.
Well, if they were had all male characteristics, they would identify as a man.
No, what if they don't?
What do you mean? What if they
We
don't?
don't know what they identify as because they can't speak or talk or say anything to us. Now we can guess, we can make a guess and say, well, this person might fit along this gender, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
What is observation? Then observation has nothing to do with your science that you believe in. If
What
you
do
were
you say?
saying
I don't
that,
believe in science. Science is not a belief
how is it not a belief?
because there is no proposition that all scientists must believe in.
No, but if you believe something, then it's a belief. If you
I
believe,
believe in the
if
things that are
I
based on evidence.
believe
I
that the
have
sky is
beliefs.
blue,
Hold on, James. Hold on. I have beliefs, but they're based on evidence. Science itself is not a belief, it's a method.
okay, you have
Okay.
evidence that the world was created from a Big Bang.
Oh my gosh. Okay. The Big Bang. Now you're going to switch topics. So do you agree that you did not have an argument against this, correct?
No, I had a very valid argument. You just didn't agree with it.
Now your argument was no, it must be male or female. That's it. That was your argument.
I actually said a lot more
You
than
didn't
that.
counter anything when it comes to the fact that it has to do with identity. You
I
didn't
gave you
counter
a bunch
anything.
of different counter arguments to that.
Well, none of them worked, sir.
Okay, let's move on to the science where we just were at, since we're not getting anywhere on the trans topic.
Okay.
So do you believe in the Big Bang?
What is the Big Bang?
I don't know. I don't believe in it. It's the start of life happened basically from some big
No.
explosion.
No. The Big Bang is not an explosion. It's not the start of anything. Not the start of life, for
What's
sure.
the bang for?
The bang is a misnomer. There is no such bang like a banging of an explosion. No, the Big Bang is only the expansion of space and time, and it doesn't have a necessary start or end. It describes a particular time in which the universe has undergone through rapid expansion. That's all it says. There's nothing, no bearing on the beginning, no bearing on life at all.
So do you believe in evolution?
Evolution is a fact. We can demonstrate it.
Well, we can demonstrate microevolution, not trillions of years of evolution. There's no way to even observe that. So
Yes, there is, through the fossil record.
how do you observe it?
By looking at the various homologies, analogies of fossils, by looking at our
Not
DNA,
observing
by
it.
looking at the different chromosomal fusions that have occurred.
You're not observing it happening. You're observing
We are.
the after effects of something that you think has happened.
Okay, well, Richard Linsky has done experiments in the 1990s where he took bacteria in the lab and observed in real time their speciation over about 60,000 generations. Now,
So he lived
that
for
is evident.
60,000 generations?
Bacteria live about only a few hours. So 60,000 generations is like 10 years.
Okay. So he...
Yeah, he studied these bacteria over 10, 20 years and discovered that
That's
they
not-
evolved.
That's not
enough.
millions of years, dude.
Evolution has nothing. Evolution does not necessitate millions of years.
Yeah, but you guys are saying that we evolved from these things millions of years. Like, I don't know the exact number, but you're saying we evolved from something that you can't observe.
We can look at the fossil record and we find stromatolites in which.
Then why is it called the theory of evolution if it's just?
It's
that?
not the theory of evolution. You're confusing evolution with natural selection, which is a theory of evolution, but all it means is that the survival of the fittest, in which beings over time they appropriate to their fittest self in their environment.
It's a theory.
Now, hold on. Evolution itself is a fact, because evolution. What is evolution? What is evolution? What is evolution?
Microevolution.
What is evolution?
What do you mean? What is it? It's when an organism develops new traits over time. I mean, that's simple.
No, that's not evolution.
And what is that?
Evolution has nothing to do with just changing a trait. Okay, it has to do with population basis change. In other words, it's not just me evolving a new trait, it's a speciation. It's a population of beings who split off, diverge, and get rendered different enough to make their DNA different. Their allele frequencies, that's the proper way to say it. The allele frequency changes over time, but this takes generational time. And so it's not just a mere changing of a trait.
So who coined this evolution?
Nobody coined evolution. It's something that various people discovered.
Darwin?
Darwin coined natural selection.
No, he coined the theory of evolution, not
via natural selection. You keep forgetting
theory of evolution.
Via natural selection. Or you're forgetting those three words at the end.
Okay, cool. Via natural selection.
Right. That's a separate, distinct.
Still the theory of evolution.
Hold on, James. That's a distinct entity from evolution simpliciter. Evolution alone means what I just described to you. They changes in allele frequencies over time. A theory of natural selection only describes the mechanism of this process via natural selection, which is no longer the only way in which things evolve. We now know that Charles Darwin got some things wrong. He was limited in his scope of understanding. And so we have since widened our scope of understanding of evolution.
So you
So
don't think that
you don't
people
have a
have
point
anything
here.
wrong now, considering Darwin had some things wrong. You guys seem to
Darwin
think
didn't necessarily have natural selection wrong, but I didn't say he was wrong. I said he didn't have as wide of a scope as we have today on evolution.
Okay, so what did he discover on evolution when
He discovered that there were different speciations occurring in various species, like in the finches, that they developed certain traits over time and they became eventually different species. That's what he theorized.
what's a
I'm sorry?
the things he wasn't it birds if I'm not mistaken? That
Yes,
he
birds.
watched. Okay. Now, the birds didn't evolve to a different species. They developed different traits, which made them different from. They're still a bird. The bird is the species. They're still a
Okay.
bird.
So you are under the impression that evolution means morphing. You morph from a chicken to a dog. That's not evolution. Evolution doesn't mean you morph into a Power Ranger. It's not morphin time. Evolution is a slow process, and it happens by looking at the speciation of something. So in other words, we look at a bird and it can no longer mate with its other previous populations of birds. You understand that? There's a divergence in populations, and to the point where one population can no longer interbreed with another one, and that's what speciation means. And this is what we've discovered, and this is what the fact of reality is.
But they're still a bird. You guys are
And they
claiming
still evolved, and those birds still evolved.
and that's fine. They can evolve, but that's what I would like to call microevolution.
And if you agree with microevolution, you also agree that macroevolution's a fact.
No, I don't.
Because they're the same thing.
Because you're saying that people evolved from monkeys. Those are two different species. There's not a subspecies. We're not a subspecies
Okay,
of apes.
so in the case of human evolution, you find that roughly 10 million years ago, we diverged from chimp ancestors. The chimps living today, they have ancestors, and we share those same ancestors about 10 million years ago, but we diverged since, and we split off into our different species of humans. And before us, there were various other human species. There were several human species before us, Homo erectus, right? Homo neanderthals, all those other species. And then you go back further into those chimp ancestors, those more ape-like animals. And then you go back further to Proconsul, one of the first apes, more monkey-like, about 10, 20, 30 million years ago, 40 million years ago.
Again, where are you getting 20, 30 million years?
The fossil record. We look at this through the fossil record by dating the geological layers of the earth, and we find that there is a progression of speciation.
How can you determine that something is that old?
By looking at the geological strata along with the fossils that they are associated with.
How can you determine the age of a fossil?
By looking at the geological layer it's in, and we can date the geological layers by looking at the rocks, looking at the different deposits, looking at the different environments at those times. We build a story of the past.
So rocks, you can look at rocks and determine how old something is.
Correct. We can look at geological formations. And because we know how things form and we know how things deposit in certain ways, we know how the different layers deposited over time, we have a record of time in the past.
And that takes no faith to believe that.
It takes evidence, and we have plenty of it.
You have no evidence. You're just saying that looking at a rock, because you know.
Well, we invoke certain principles when we do geology. Number one, namely, is the principle of superposition, in which you find that older layers are going to be less, they're going to be more deeper than the younger layers, right? The younger layers are going to deposit on top. And now when you look at the different strata, when you dig at the ground, we find that these different layers in the different in these different configurations, we can determine how old they are based on the fact of, yeah, we know how long it takes for this thing to deposit. We know how long it takes for this layer to deposit. We add them all up and we get a story of the
How do
past.
you know how long it takes for, if you're saying something's 10 million years old, how can you possibly say that that's how long
Yeah,
it
because
takes
we
if
can date
you're
in
saying
those specific
you
layers.
can't
We can
observe
date
it?
in those specific layers. We can date specific rocks and materials. These are
You can't
isotopes that
observe
decay
the
over
time.
time,
You
and
can't
we can determine
observe the rock.
mathematically. I'm sorry.
You can't. You're not observing the rock actually aging in real time.
Yes, we
You
are.
can't.
Okay. Okay.
How?
So when
You're
we do
alive for 10
radiometric
million
dating,
years.
we don't have to be alive for that long to see the
How do you
past, sir.
observe it? How
By
do I
looking at
observe
the
it?
rocks. By let me
Okay, so
explain.
you observe it with what?
You're
Your
asking
eyes?
lots of questions, and which are great questions, but you're not waiting for the answer. Okay, let me answer.
Okay.
When we look at rocks, we can determine how much daughter isotope is present versus the parent isotope when we do mathematics and we discover how old these rocks are based on the substances inside of these rocks. If you add that with the different fossil record, the chronology of the fossil record, and we have a very accurate uh, timeline of the past.
Was that your explanation?
Is this your counter?
My counter is still the same. You still haven't observed it with your own eyes.
We absolutely have observed it with our own eyes. We can see these rocks. We can dig them up in the ground. Maybe you've never been outside before, but if you touch grass, those are rocks. Each of those you can date and learn about.
Okay, if you dig a skeleton out of the ground and look at this skeleton,
Mm-hmm.
can you tell just by looking at the skeleton with your eyes?
Uh-huh.
Can you tell how old that person lived to?
It's not just looking with our eyes. It's also measuring the samples of those bones. It's also measuring the geological layer it's in, right? You're forgetting that part. You're forgetting the methodology, not
What are
just
you
looking at it.
measuring? What are you measuring though?
The substance in the bone, the material, the bony material
Okay, what does that tell you?
that tells you what's in it. It tells you how old it can be. It also can tell you, in the case of the rock around it, we measured that too, and it tells us the substance and how old those are.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think you're gonna convince me on this one, but let's move on to the God, and I don't think I'm gonna convince you otherwise. So there's no point in going any further on that.
But but look at what you're doing. You're not listening to anything I'm telling you, and you're just going to dismiss everything. How
No,
convenient is that for you to just go, no, 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 it's all wrong. I don't believe it.
no,
But you
I
never
heard.
look into it. You never really challenge it. You just
I
say,
have
well, how do you know that? How do you know that? But you never actually know what you're talking about.
I have challenged it.
You
I
haven't
don't
challenged it with a scientific mentality. You just went, no, it can't be right, can't be right, can't be right.
because I don't put faith in science. You
Nobody
do.
puts faith in
I put
science,
faith
sir.
in God. You
Look,
put faith
look.
in science.
Okay, how do you know God is real?
I don't. It's called faith. Nobody definitively knows that God's real.
Oh, so
There
everybody's
is a
wrong because so if you have faith in science, you're wrong, but if you have faith in God, you're good. You're legit. See, this is a special pleading case. And it's not even correct. Nobody has faith in science. We have evidence in science. And the fact that you
I
have
have
to
evidence. I have
hide
evidence in
behind
God.
faith, the bad word, the F word, faith, you have to hide behind that so much because you know you don't have any evidence of God. You just believe it.
Okay, so you're telling me. So you don't believe in God. Let me just ask you that.
No.
I'm assuming you don't because it says God is imaginary. Okay. So you're telling me that everything on this planet, and this is just looking at it from a scientific, from your viewpoint, everything on this planet right down to freaking any microscopic organism, works synergistically and has an actual function, that's an accident. That's random. That's just nobody. There's no design in that.
Well, when I see babies getting cancer, there's function to the cancer. But does that mean there's somebody meddling in with the baby, giving it cancer? Is God doing that?
No, but there's plenty of toxins
Okay, so
wasting
then there
away
are,
in our
then by your
bodies.
own concession, there are instances in which things happen with functions, yet there is no design behind that. So it can't point to design.
Well, there is
So
design
if
behind it.
function and complexity and all that doesn't point to design,
There
then you
is
have no
design
argument.
behind cancer. It's
Your
called
argument is rendered useless.
toxins. It's called toxic environment. It's called toxic food. You're going to tell me none of that contributes to cancer?
Oh, so you're telling me that God made it toxic?
No, I'm telling you that people made it toxic.
But before people, there were cancer. There was still cancer.
What are you talking about before people ever? How do you even know that?
We can find it in the fossil record. We find dinosaurs with cancerous bones, tumors affecting their bones.
So you're telling me that that cancer still survives without a host? That's interesting. That's not science.
Cancer, no, what I'm telling you is that cancer has always existed.
You can't tell me that cancer has always existed if cancer doesn't exist, if it doesn't have a host to live in.
Cancer has always existed with life because cancer is the byproduct of living organisms. Sometimes cancer cells evolve, they emerge, and they bypass the immune system, and that's why they proliferate in people and in everything. Even trees get cancer in some sense. Cancer affects every living thing to a degree, especially larger animals like us and dinosaurs. And so it is not. It has nothing to do with. It has nothing to do with being human. We didn't have to go through a fall. We're not toxic people. It's not my fault that we get cancer. Only there are other.
How do you know we didn't go through a fall though?
How do we know what?
How do you know there wasn't a fall?
There's no evidence of a fall. Where's the evidence? What even is a fall?
Well, you know what the fall is in the term that we're talking about. It's the fall in Genesis.
Well, colloquially I understand it to think that it's something negative, so I give it a negative connotation. But if you really want to do the nitty gritty on it, I don't know what it is. Just a ambiguous term.
So you don't know what happened in Genesis? You're not aware of that?
I'm aware that there is word of humans doing bad things, but I'm not aware of any details of that. I'm not aware why it would even matter for us to do bad things, and therefore God being more real.
So you're not even aware of the Bible then?
I am aware of the Bible, sir.
So you've read the Bible?
I've read enough of it to realize it's not real.
So what made you think it wasn't real?
When I realized it conflicted with science.
Where does it conflict?
Genesis, Adam and Eve, for example. There were no first people. That can't be. We know that we evolved. Because there is no... the idea that there's a first person is a fundamental error. Because we know that if you go back far enough, I had a grandpa, he had a grandpa, he had a grandpa. There's always going to be humans before me. And the further back you go, my great-great-grandpa a million years ago, still going to be a human, but just different. And as you go further down the line, they're going to be ever different in a way that makes them a different species. So 10 million years ago, it's not like there was a first person that just magically appeared. There's no person popping out, there's no monkey popping out of a human being. It's a gradual change over many, many generations, and it's very hard to tell or pinpoint where there was the first human species, where it began. It's like it's a gradual change, a very slight gradual change. You can't decipher the exact moment where a species emerge.
It doesn't really, I mean, it doesn't really disprove Adam and Eve, though.
Well, it shows us that there wasn't a first person. It shows us that we did undergo evolution, and before Adam and Eve, supposedly there were more humans, and you go back further, there were more and more ape-like animals that look very similar to us. The further back you go, there you get ever different. And
Why do you think bad things happen in the world then?
because I don't think the universe cares about us. Even though we want it to care about us, I think shit just happens. Good and bad, things we perceive as good and bad. And ultimately, nothing is good or bad. It's just what we perceive them to be. Good things or bad things. But nature doesn't judge. Nature doesn't have these kinds of human judgments. It just is.
So there is no good and there is no evil.
In a very deep sense, good and bad are just subjective.
So how does that work? How does, if it's subjective, if good and evil are subjective, basically that means anybody can really make up their own rule book.
Yes, we do all the time. The Bible is a good example of a made-up rule book. So is the Quran. So is the Hindu books. All the different religious texts. The U.S. government, the British government. There's all kinds of made-up rules and laws. They're all subjective.
Why would someone make up things that go against the natural human nature?
Well, first of all, humans have built-in guilt mechanisms where we recognize where we feel bad when we do certain things. And so, of course, it's just a certain part of the brain that alarms us when we, believe something bad is going to happen. So we feel guilty. And so that has also informed us of our moral judgment through the years, through the centuries.
Yeah, but so if someone doesn't have that, if someone doesn't have a conscience, they're okay. It's cool.
If they don't have a functioning brain, then yes, they will have a vastly different array of moral values.
No, I'm saying what you're saying is if someone doesn't have empathy, if they don't have conscience, if they don't show compassion, if they're not, if they don't care about their neighbor, if they don't love their neighbor as theirself, if they don't do these things, it's okay because they're allowed to choose their own morals. I mean, because at the end of the day, it's
never said it's okay. What I'm saying is,
why isn't it okay?
Because I think it would be wrong for you to treat others terribly, right?
But why?
But they themselves might believe that that's okay, but I don't.
Why would it be wrong?
Well, it's just wrong to me because I don't think that we should treat others terribly.
But why do you think that?
Because I know that there can be bad consequences when you do that.
What kind of consequences?
People being ostracized from their society, people getting hurt, being harmed.
But what makes any of that bad?
We don't like it. We just feel like it's bad.
Who's we though? Like, are we
People.
talking about you, or are we talking about everybody?
Most people look at a person being whooped and they go, "Yeah, that's bad." Right? It's just the way our brains operate.
So it's just random.
No, not random. It's just the way we are. It's just the way we evolved.
See, I disagree. I think we were made in the image of God, and we all have a conscience. We all kind of know what's right and wrong. And
oh, so you're saying God instilled us with all these morals?
I'm saying deep down, it is imprinted in us. We know what's right and wrong. Some people choose to go in the opposite direction.
Okay, so deep down inside James, you know it's wrong to wear mixed fabrics, right?
That it's wrong to wear mixed fabrics.
Yeah, this is what God says is wrong.
Yeah, it was wrong in the time of Leviticus. Yeah.
But I don't think that's a very deep sense of knowledge that it's wrong, right? I don't think it's just. I don't think saying that wearing mixed fabrics
You didn't
is
hear what I
something
just
that is
said.
intuitively wrong, right?
You didn't hear what I just said. It was wrong for the time that they lived in. God.
That's irrelevant. That's not relevant. That's not relevant. What I'm saying is,
Because you say it's not relevant.
no, it's not relevant because it doesn't matter what time it was good or bad in. We don't have an internal sense of intuition that it's wrong to wear mixed fabrics or that it's wrong to work on the Sabbath. Isn't that something that still applies to us?
I'm not talking about laws that God has given as far as.
But those are moral laws. There's the Ten Commandments.
I'm not a. I don't think everybody should abide by the Ten Commandments. I'm not saying that.
Really?
I don't
Oh,
believe
so
everyone.
which God's laws were bad?
I'll tell you what everybody is supposed to be abiding by now is love your neighbor as yourself and love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Those are the two that the entire law hangs on.
But that
So you
doesn't
can go
seem
and
very.
cherry pick
But that
those Ten
doesn't seem very.
Commandments.
But look, the very thing you're saying, love God with all your heart, that doesn't seem very intuitive. I mean, what is the God thing that we're talking about? How can I intuitively do this if I don't even know what the hell God is? Your argument that everything that God thinks is moral is super intuitive to us doesn't. It just falls apart when we look at these details. Mixed
Have you heard?
fabrics, working in the Sabbath, you know, these don't seem very intuitive.
Have you heard? Seek and ye shall find. Have you heard of that?
I don't know what that means.
That means you seek it earnestly and with a genuine heart of trying to find the truth, and you'll find it.
So if I search with all my heart, I'll find the truth. Says the one who believes a giant boat fell in Turkey and knocked off all the penguins out, and they hopped all the way their way to Antarctica. That's not truth at all. I don't think. I don't
Giant
think
boat
that it's
fell.
the one who said that evolution never happens. I don't think that's very trustworthy. The Bible isn't a very trustworthy story, and to say that you have the truth because you've seeked it, that isn't going to qualify it as truth. I think that's just qualifying it as faith.
Well, anything that you're claiming is truth is only truth because you've seeked it out and learned
Not
it.
at all, sir. It's not just that I've seeked it out, it's that it's been demonstrated. That's the most important element of truth. Not just that we've sought it, but that we've demonstrated it to be true.
Based on scientific practices that some guy came up with.
Yes, just like some guy came up with the phone you're using. See, the
Exactly,
things
just
we
like-
invent, the things humans do can work.
Yeah, and the countless men that wrote countless books in the Bible are no different than your guy that wrote a bunch of stuff in your
The
science
difference
book.
is very stark. The difference is a storybook in which we have to take purely on faith, which is backed on no demonstrable data, and the other side we have an entire array of facts and evidences stacking for what I'm telling.
Jesus didn't walk the earth then.
I don't know what Jesus. I don't know if he did or not, but that's irrelevant to God
It's
existing.
historically proven that Jesus walked the earth. You can't deny that.
I can agree with that, but that has no relevance to the topic.
Yeah, that's one thing in the Bible that is proven.
Well, even if that was the case, well, I'm sure there are things in the Bible that are real. I'm not saying that the entirety of the Bible is completely made up, but a vast swath of it is nonsense.
And I'm not saying the entirety of scientific knowledge is incorrect. I'm
But
just
the problem
saying
is
that
that the
vast
problem.
majority is nonsense.
But the problem is that your critique doesn't work because you haven't done the research. My critique works because
Done as
I've looked
much
at the stories.
research into the Bible as I've done
My
into
critique
science.
works because I've looked at the Bible and none of the things that I'm critiquing actually have evidence behind them. They're nonsense. Talking donkeys, talking snakes, a big ass boat with all the animals on it. Right? These things are not fact.
But a monkey evolving to a human is fact.
That's
I know
not
you
that's
have
not
no
what evolution means. No monkey turned into a person. This is empowering.
I'm not talking about overnight. I'm talking about millions of years.
Okay.
A monkey developed different traits, and over time, over a long extended period of time, they developed such different traits that now they are a different species called
Yeah, that's called evolution
yeah.
because we are,
That's called
James, you know that we are apes,
far-fetched.
right? James, you know that we're apes today, right?
We're not apes. We're humans.
Humans are a type of ape, a great ape.
Humans are what?
We are a type of ape called a great ape.
I mean, if you identify as a great ape, sir, you can. That sounds
Look,
virtuous.
I think that you're not understanding this because you don't even know what humans are. You don't even know what evolution means. You don't know anything that
Well,
we've
humans
talked
don't
about today.
exist.
And
Humans don't
I urge
exist.
you to learn. I urge you to learn about science. I urge you to learn about the Bible. I urge you to learn more about the world around you.
Humans don't exist. We're all great apes.
All right, we'll have one more guest come in here.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
All right. So obviously I agree with your first and the third point. There's no point debating those things. They're just facts. But I did want to ask you why I should be vegan. Genuinely just trying to learn here. So,
Yeah, sure. Good question. I'm vegan for the same reason. I don't like to abuse people, right? I don't want to exploit others. And so anybody who agrees that we should not exploit others should be vegan.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I kind of have a more relative moral aspect on consuming animal and animal based products, where I feel like by the very nature of humans themselves, like we're omnivores, like we're not herbivorous. I'm not saying need, but it's more accessible for us to consume animal products, and it is like for me personally just really expensive to be vegan, and
Why?
it's like
What's so expensive? What vegan foods are so expensive?
I mean, to search for like plant-based protein sources like tofu, for example, tofu is really expensive where I live. Like not even kidding. Like
How much?
if you so basically I think if you compare to like chicken breasts and tofu, like how the amount of protein that I can get from
Yeah,
a
so I'm just curious, how much is tofu where you live? Where do you live?
oh, I live in Portland, Maine.
Portland, Maine. Okay. Tofu. How much is tofu where you live?
That's not like
I couldn't hear you.
oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it's $3 for like 16 ounces of tofu where I live.
$3? That's it?
Oh yeah.
That ain't bad.
I mean, if I if I want to have the amount of protein that I need for myself, it's not gonna sustain me with that much. Like I'll have to have at least
Okay.
like three servings of that every single day, which makes it like $9 a day. That's a lot just for that, you know.
No. So you said 16 ounces tofu protein in 1 ounce. There's about 5 grams of protein in 1 ounce, right? So that that $3 pack of 16 ounces of tofu is going to render you about um, 80 grams of protein. That's not enough for you in one meal?
I don't think that's like you said 16 grams of protein in 1 ounce.
16 ounces. 1 ounce has about 4 to 5 grams of
Four to
protein.
five grams, really? Huh.
Yeah.
I I might have to look at better options, but the ones that I've found so far, like it's like in 16 ounce, I get like 40 grams of protein. And if
That's
I,
that's that's still pretty good. $3 for 40 grams of protein. That's still
oh
pretty
yeah, I
damn good.
mean, I, I'm a pretty heavy dude in general. I need more protein if I want to have my lean muscle, maintained and all that. Because I work out, so I need like almost I think I weigh like 175, so I need that much grams in
Yeah.
protein.
Yeah.
So so if it's like
That's why.
40 to 50, like it'll be a lot.
Now, how about I hope you're not just eating tofu because vegans also eat beans, pastas,
Yeah,
and
but
guess
the
what? Guess what, Smith? All those contain protein too.
yeah, you're right. But the thing is, let's say something like Greek yogurt, for example, it has a lot of those like other amino acids that something like beans or lentils or other plant-based sources of proteins do not.
It has
Um,
what? I'm sorry.
Amino acids, some of the
Oh,
amino acids that you don't get in beans, you can get in yogurt,
oh,
like Greek
name
yogurt.
name me a single amino acid that I can't get from a bean.
So any of the 20 essential amino acids, if you look up, like beans do not have all the 20 essential amino
Yeah, which
acids.
one? Which amino acid do beans not have?
Hold on. Let me look it up real quick. I apologize.
Sure. You're not going to find it though, because beans have all amino acids. Beans have all They're a complete protein. All plants are complete proteins, and the quality is just fine. It's if not better than animal proteins because animal proteins raise your risk of heart disease.
It says cysteine and methionine. Those two are not really present.
What you said? Not really present. What do you mean there? Right? It's not the
They're
same as
absent.
not
Sorry,
existing. I
they're
agree.
absent. Yeah, no, they're
Okay,
absent.
cysteine
And methionine. Yeah,
content, and let's just say like a pinto bean or something, right?
yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So pinto beans do contain cysteine. What was the other one?
Methionine.
Yeah. Pinto
Methionine.
beans have that. So I'm on myfooddata.com.
Right.
It actually gives a list of all amino acids, and it actually I'm sorry, 1 cup of pinto beans has
Mm-hmm.
50% RDI of cysteine. 1 cup of pinto beans has 27% of methionine.
Okay.
So beans have all the amino acids, and if you're getting even a half a cup of that, you're going to get plenty of protein. Plus tofu, plus all the other foods, you're going to get plenty of protein. That's why there are vegan bodybuilders who are far heavier than you, yet they're stronger and more muscular than you, yet they're vegan. Because you don't need to eat meat to be strong.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't saying that that I need meat to be strong. I was just like, maybe I need to do more research, but as of right now, like it's a little more expensive to me, and I feel like I have to mix and match a lot of different combinations of vegan sources to get all the amino acids that I need. But maybe I need to do more
Again,
research.
every single plant-based food has all the amino acids in it. It's just the profile is going to be a bit different. And secondly, as long as you're getting enough calories, you're going to be healthy and fine. And you can get that, at least in my case, I find it very much affordable to be vegan versus eating
Right.
meat. Meat's very expensive. Eggs, meat are becoming expensive now. There's no
Yeah,
way
eggs are
you
getting
can
expensive for
afford
sure.
to just simply buy a plant-based option, especially beans, rices, tofu. These are some of the cheapest foods on the planet. And I don't see how this is expensive for you.
Right. No, yeah, I might I don't know why tofu, like you're saying, I'm not saying you're wrong, but you're saying that tofu does have like, you know, 80 grams of protein and like $3, which is not bad, honestly. But I'll have to find a brand that does have that. I think just not dedicated enough, I guess. That's why I wanted to ask you. Yeah.
For sure. Now, look, my advice to you is to keep learning. Learn about
Yeah.
food, learn about health, learn about nutrition, learn about the animals too. Learn about the process by which we get animals. Learn.
Yeah. Yeah,
Research.
no, for real. And I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I have been trying to be vegan, but then, it's also like if you look around you, like it's more acceptable not to be vegan, and so then I
Right.
kind of just let it go. But I do want to change that at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Just keep learning. There's a couple vegan documentaries on Netflix or something. You can check those out. Just keep
Yep.
learning.
Yeah. And awesome, man. Like I think you're talking about things that are important, and I wish you a good day. Honestly, thank you.
Thank you. See, being patient and kind is always going to be the best way to help people. There were so many points in this debate, this entire session, that I could have been angry and mean and mad and rude, but I didn't do it. Yeah, I'll have one more person up.
Yo, what's good? Let's see. So, what do you mean as trans woman? Like, I don't. Can you like get like a definition? Like, can you give me a definition more? Like, cause like I don't know. Like, I really like. I don't want to be homophobic or anything, but I just go by as like as what I observe and see. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I see someone with long hair and they have girl features, I identify them as a girl.
Yeah,
Or
I agree. That's how we typically do it. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
so yeah, go ahead, my bad.
But a trans woman is just somebody who identifies as a woman, but was born I- as society gave them the definition of a boy or something, but they identify as a different gender than they were given at birth. Um, that's all it means.
But like, so it doesn't even matter like what they have. They can just identify as a boy. Or, like, do they have to like get surgery or like does it matter or no?
Nope, you don't need surgery at all. You just it's identification. That's all it means. Look, I identify as a man.
Yeah.
Even if you were to remove my reproductive system tomorrow, I would still be a man. So it has nothing to do with your genitals. It has to do with your brain.
Is
And
this because like animals are based like that? Like, because animals think like that too, or no?
there's no evidence that animals understand or have gender like we do, but the human brain is vastly more complex, and hence we have areas of the brain dedicated to identity, dedicated to gender identities, hypothalamus, for example. And we are finding correlations between cisgender men and trans men, and vice versa, trans women and cis women. We're finding correlations in the brain, and we're finding that identity comes from the brain.
So, wow. So I guess. So it doesn't even matter, like, if even like a kid can identify as like a different gender. A kid.
Yeah, children know that they're transgender. About
What?
they're 4 or 5 years old. Yes,
Wait,
kids
so a
kids
kid
many times know their gender.
can a kid request their pants for surgery? Like,
A child can request it, but that's most of the time you can't get it on these heavier surgeries until you're probably 18. But sometimes 16 years old is enough, or even 14 or 15 is old enough to get some basic gender affirming care.
wow, that's kind of crazy to me. But like,
It's crazy to you, but it's a real phenomenon. People really have these identities, just like you and me. I identify as a man, and if I woke up tomorrow and I had a different set of genitals, I'd be very upset. I'd be very mad, and I'd want to get it changed, right? And so the same's happening to these other people. It's just that there is this innate incongruence between their gender and their sex. And so that's why these gender affirming care, it's very life saving for these people who experience dysphoria, serious dysphoria. And that's why we have to take this very seriously.
do you think do you think it's gonna take like a long time for like everyone to like get used to this?
No, it doesn't have to. Tomorrow, we could all learn about this and realize that we're all wrong. But yes, I think for the most part, if we continue not educating others, it's going to take years until we finally catch on.
I mean, yeah, but I don't know, but like in school, like it's probably gonna be really hard for people to come out, no, because in school you could get bullied and stuff. So I really don't know, like.
That doesn't stop any people from coming out. But
Uh,
yes, I agree that there are societal pressures in the way. But just like every other aspect of social change, we've persevered through it all.
Damn. I mean, that's really much it. That's all I had, Mike. It was nice talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just because someone identifies as a certain gender doesn't make them that gender. It does. See, I identify as a man. That's why I'm a man. That makes me a man. You take it for granted the fact that your identity of a man or a woman comes from your brain. It comes from how you think, not your pee-pee. And so people don't understand this yet. People still don't quite understand this. That doesn't make you a man. But what's a man? See, in your eyes, you probably think a man has a pee-pee. But we're learning that that's not necessarily the case when it comes to the brain, the psychology behind people. Our identities are tethered to how we think and how our brains are. And we have to take this into consideration when we think about gender identities. And we can't just go, oh no, that can't be, it has to be with your sex. No, we have to recognize that there is a sex-gender distinction because it's a reality. We are finding very peculiar correlations between different brains. And we're finding various brain phenotypes that are associated with the respective gender identities. This is something very serious, and we can't just dismiss it and say, no, it's either male or female, that's it. a male, a woman's an adult human female. That misses out on all the good richness of modern psychology, modern neuroscience. And so, yes. So if PDF files identify as a child, it's not wrong to. You can't identify as a child. That's not gender. A child is somebody with a specific chronological age. It has nothing to do with a gender, and an adult is not going to identify with, you know, non-adult traits. Gender is not a particular body organism. There's no one configuration of body that would render somebody a man or a woman in terms of its outer anatomy. But in the case of the brain, it's a bit different. We know that the brain is a bit more complicated, and so just like there are ways in which people think, people that are good at math have a specific brain structure that is larger than others, right? So just like we're finding those cases of neuroanatomy being correlating to different thought patterns and identities, the same with gender. Right? And so we can say that with the brain in a way. But again, it has nothing to do with your pee-pee or your gamey production or any of that stuff. That is distinct from gender. Because we are finding that people who grew up with these types of genitals or whatever, sexual reproductive systems, they are finding a stark incongruence between their identities and their bodies. And this is something we can't reject or dismiss. And when you consider the accompanying evidence, finding in neuroscience and all the above, we have to consider again what gender is. And we can't rely on old common uses of the word man and woman or male and female. We have to recognize that they need updating. Are you saying gender is social or biological? Gender is both. You can say gender is biological in the sense of neurobiology, and you can say gender is social in the case of social norms and social roles and social behaviors that might have implications for gender. So it's both. It's a bit complicated. And I never said a woman is a social role. Oh my God. There are social roles associated with being woman. But I'm not saying that being a woman is itself a social role. No, look, a lot of gender critical folks are just saying, are under the impression that their identity as woman is being somehow reduced or diminished. But how? Nothing about you is changing. Nothing about how we refer to you is changing. All we're doing is recognizing that other people must be included in this definition. And you're not being reduced, you're not being diminished, you're nothing's happened to you. You just think that this is too crazy and therefore we have to be against this. But you're not willing to listen. You're just sitting there only willing to be contrarian because it's cool. It's the cool thing to do. To say, oh, it's only male or female and woman's an adult human female. That's a cool thing to do. But it is not in accordance with the evidence. There are no men that are women. Nobody said that there are men that are women. I don't think you're quite understanding what gender means. What if someone feels like a man one day and a woman another day? That's not how identity works. Nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to be a woman today. I'm going to be a man today. No, it's not that. It's not that binary. Gender is a spectrum. And so there are very small differences in between the brain that can generate very large differences in how we socially identify. And so no one's going to say, oh, I'm a man today, I'm a woman tomorrow. It's not that simple, but it's the case that it's not very clear what our gender identities are. There's no objective measurement of this. There's no objective measurement of what a truck is or a car is. Just like there's no objective measurement of what a man or a woman is, or somebody who's non-binary, or somebody who's any of the other genders. These categories are not tightly categorized in a way that makes them objectively distinct from other categories with only a couple conditions, or even one, let alone one. These are fuzzy. Gender is fuzzy just because the brain's a fuzzy thing. The brain's a very complicated mess. And so it's only expected that there will be complexity yielded from how these brains operate within society. At what age would you accept someone's gender identity? Well, children understand their genders at 4, maybe 5 years old. Many times. Sometimes it takes a bit longer, but typically, when we are about 4 or 5 years old, we develop a sense of identity in the somatosensory cortex. Enough of the brain is developed so that we have a sense of identity. And so along with that comes gender identity. I mean, us cisgender people take it for granted. We don't think about this. But there is a time in which we realized that I was a man in society. That was where I fitted. And in other people, it's different. We get our sense of identity from feedback. No, not necessarily just a feedback alone, but we get identity from our brains. And social pressures can change and alter our identity. Social environments can impact our identities in some ways. They can affect how we label ourselves. They can impact how we label ourselves, what roles we fulfill. But I'm tired. I'm very tired. Maybe tomorrow I'll go live again and debate tomorrow, maybe if I have time. Trans women are men. But what is a man? If your definition of man is an adult human male, the problem is that definition doesn't account for all of the psychological nuance that we now understand through neuroscience in regards to gender. And there are cases in which people grow up with male sexual parts but don't identify as a man. And so what happens there? Well, your definition doesn't account for that. Mine can. My definition very clearly accounts for all that nuance. Yours doesn't, and that's why my definition is the one we are now using and recognizing. No, it doesn't. What do you mean, no, it doesn't? What's the actual substance? Look, guys, I've heard it all at this point. I've heard all the counter arguments, and they're just not very good. You need to elaborate.